Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, air, restoration, and flood services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Trebas Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Elizabeth Sanchez, in for Maya Travolsi. Tsunami waves hit the United States after an 8.8 magnitude earthquake struck off Russia's coast. The quake triggered widespread tsunami warnings and advisories, including Hawaii and the entire U.S. West Coast. We'll have more on the ripple effects here in San Diego in a moment. Michael Yoshida begins our coverage with a look at the emergency response.
Tsunami alerts across Hawaii sending residents and tourists racing to evacuate coastal areas.
Our number one priority is life safety, and so right now it's an easy thing. Get away from the beaches, get inland, and get upward.
Roads and highways packed as people scrambled for higher ground.
You can expect a tsunami wave to hit the state, and it will not just hit one beach. It will wrap around the islands very likely.
Well, we were up visiting Volcano National Park, and saw the tsunami warning go off on our phones.
The warnings triggered after an 8.8 magnitude earthquake struck near Russia's east coast. Waves from the quake tied for the sixth strongest ever recorded, lashing Russia's coast. As tsunami warnings were issued from Japan to Chile, with huge waves predicted for parts of French Polynesia.
This earthquake basically moves the seafloor upward by roughly a meter, a few feet, something like that. And that leads to a bulge of water that starts traveling across the ocean.
In the U.S., the tsunami waves hit shores in Hawaii, California, Oregon, Washington, and Alaska overnight. Waves, some as high as 5 feet, were recorded on Maui's North Shore. As warnings were downgraded across the U.S., officials from Hawaii to California saying the worst was over, but urging everyone to remain vigilant.
We were fortunate this time. There was significant tsunami surges. We're still dealing with those now, but it did stay within the banks.
In Washington, Michael Yoshida, KPBS News.
And here in San Diego County, the tsunami advisory has been lifted for the coast after minor changes in sea level overnight and this morning. KPBS reporter Katie Anastas says downtown San Diego saw the highest waves.
Surfers headed back to the water this morning after officials told San Diegans to stay away Tuesday night.
Oh, I heard about it at work yesterday. And I wasn't going to hit us. We were going to be fine.
Strong currents could still pose a risk. That's according to Miguel Miller, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service in San Diego. He says the highest waves reached the Broadway Pier at 5:40 this morning at about 9.5 inches above the predicted tide level.
The blue line is the predicted tide level. The red line is the observed. And you can see how smooth things are before the tsunami hits. And then all of a sudden, it gets really bumpy. Tsunamis aren't like this big breaking wave that, that you saw in the movies from a long time ago. But it's more of tidal surges that come, they recede, and then they come again periodically.
The difference between the predicted tide level and the observed tide level is called the residual. Miller says this morning's residuals were smaller than tsunamis in 2011 and 2022. With help from Tammy Murga, Katie Anastas, KPBS News.
It's been an interesting 24 hours across the entire North Pacific basin, including in California. And, well, the tail of the tape here, there were some tsunami wave heights that impacted some areas, including in Crescent City, California. But this was a manageable difference compared to your typical waves. So a 3.7-foot increase above the pre-existing wave levels and water levels. We'll talk about that. We'll also jump into the complete forecast coming up.
Well, you might have a grocery store club card in your wallet or use an app to clip coupons online, but these tech advancements are leaving some people behind, especially seniors. A new San Diego law is intended to tackle the digital divide. KPBS reporter Tanya Thorne takes us to a town hall aimed at showing shoppers how it will work.
coupons used to arrive in the mailbox or the Sunday paper. But with the digital age, many stores turned to digital deals.
What the stores were doing is everything was electronic to be able to get the coupons. So there'd be a discount, and you could see somebody next to you getting a discount. You could be paying $12 for something, and they're paying $9 because they got a discount.
Bonnie Ann Dowd says digital coupons could be especially difficult for older adults to access.
You start looking at the two populations. You look at a population of us that as we're growing older and maybe have never used technology, we were being cut out.
In April, the San Diego City Council unanimously approved an ordinance banning digital-only deals in grocery stores. Deals must be available to all shoppers without requiring digital access.
Kroger, for example, is going to have a kiosk where you can just touch screen and say, oh, I want this coupon, this coupon, this coupon. We've heard of Ralph's is just doing it at the cashier. And so if you ask for it, they have their own barcode they scan to give you the digital discount you're asking for.
On Wednesday, city leaders and resource advocates held a town hall to highlight the importance of the ordinance.
The idea here is not to punish grocery stores. We know that it's tough for them with the cost of food and their businesses as well. The idea is just to offer the same equal access to discounts to everybody.
San Diego City Council members Marnie Von Wilper and Shawnila Rivera say the ordinance isn't only for seniors, but all residents trying to keep up with the cost of living.
What this means for the average person, this means it being easier to save 10, 15, 20 bucks every single time you go to the grocery store. That adds up. And any way that we can do that for folks, so we can show them that we're fighting for them, that we're fighting against greed, we're fighting against deceptive corporate practices.
Grocery stores have until October 1st to be in compliance, but the ordinance only affects stores within San Diego city limits. Elo Rivera and Von Wilpert say they will pitch the idea for a county-wide initiative, but encourage the public to advocate with their county representatives. Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
The Carlsbad City Council is compromising on traffic circles in the city's Barrio neighborhood. KPBS North County reporter Alexander Wynn says instead of 5 as originally planned, the area will only get 1.
Thank you. Item 13. At last night's meeting, council members seemed to sour on having multiple traffic circles in Carlsbad's oldest neighborhood, despite originally approving them back in March.
At that time, there was an appetite for traffic circles, and since then, many state laws have negatively impacted our ability to plan and execute projects that solve problems.
And residents are roughly split on the issue, with slightly more people favoring traffic circles. Some residents were concerned about losing parking spaces.
It's already very difficult to park there.
5 traffic circles were proposed for the barrio, and that would result in the loss of 27 parking spots. But all residents agree on one thing.
So everybody drives as fast as they can.
These people are just in a hurry to get nowhere.
They're routinely going through at 50 miles per hour plus because they feel that they can.
The need for traffic calming measures in the neighborhood. City Engineer Tom Frank presented the council with 3 options. Install all 5 traffic circles, install only 1 with other traffic calming measures, install none with only traffic calming measures. Ultimately, the council chose option 2, which also preserves federal funding for the project. The city needs to build at least 1 traffic circle to satisfy the federal grant of $5 million. Councilmember Kevin Shin says that was a good compromise to solve the speeding issue.
A lot of folks said, I don't mind the traffic circles if people knew how to drive through them. And that was what I believe to be an education problem. But there's a difficulty in educating the public en masse when we're trying to do things.
The traffic circle will be installed at Pine Avenue and Harding Street as an entrance to the barrio. It will also include artwork. Christine Davis with the Carlsbad Village Association was pleased with the outcome.
Obviously, everybody wanted some traffic calming measures. That was evident from everybody who spoke. But I believe that this is a good hybrid approach. We still get to maintain funding. Traffic circles as an entrance to the barrio, I think, will be lovely.
The council also directed staff to come back in November to present other traffic calming options for the barrio. Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
Former Vice President Kamala Harris is putting an end to speculation about her political future, at least for now. In a statement released today, Harris said she loves her home state of California, but after deep reflection, she's decided not to run for governor in 2026. Harris says she will share more information about her plans later this year, and she has not ruled out another run for president in 2028, but it's not known when she will make that decision. A dozen Democratic lawmakers are suing the Trump administration for blocking their access to federal immigration detention centers. The lawsuit is over a Department of Homeland Security policy that requires a week's notice while also limiting access to certain field offices. According to the lawsuit, that policy violates federal law that permits unannounced inspections by members of Congress. Members of Congress who have visited the facilities have reported overcrowded cells, spoiled food, and medical neglect. El Cajon's police chief has recently decided his department will stop automatically responding to certain mental health crisis calls. For our Why It Matters segment, Voice of San Diego reporter Lisa Halverstadt explains why he made this decision and the reaction it's received.
In May, El Cajon police stopped automatically sending officers when someone threatens to harm themselves. That's as long as there's not an apparent crime or danger to others. This has sometimes meant mental health experts that contract with the county also didn't respond or couldn't get aid from police when they requested it. El Cajon police say they made this decision for legal reasons. A court ruling raised questions about whether officers could face personal lawsuits for encounters with unarmed people with mental illnesses if they use excessive force. So far, El Cajon is the only local police agency to make this change. The city also saw massive protests in 2016 after officers shot Alfred Alongo, an unarmed African man who was having a mental health crisis. County officials and advocates are pushing back. They argue El Cajon's change presents safety issues for people in crisis and for those trying to help them. Now, you may be wondering, hasn't the county ramped up resources to respond to mental health calls without police? Yes, but county policies keep mobile crisis response teams from responding if there are threats like a weapon or injuries that require medical attention. The director of the Psychiatric Emergency Response Program says they saw a 33% drop in crisis calls in El Cajon after the past couple months compared with the same period in 2024. They can't respond to calls without police. Supervisor Joel Anderson represents the area. He argues the El Cajon City Council should review the change. El Cajon City Manager Graham Mitchell says his city might consider changing the policy as it gets more data and if it gets more resources from the county. I'm Lisa Halverstadt for Voice of San Diego, and that's why it matters.
Voice of San Diego is one of our partners for the Public Matters Initiative. You can learn more at kpbs.org/Public Matters.
I'm Amna Navaz. Tonight on the NewsHour, a massive earthquake off Russia's coast triggers tsunami warnings across the Pacific Rim. That's coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
The San Diego City Council has approved a plan to convert the high-rise office building at 101 Ash Street into affordable housing. The city purchased the building in 2022 after a string of scandals, including asbestos contamination. A team of developers plan to convert the building into 250 affordable homes, along with retail space and a child care center. The developers have 2 years to finance the project, which depends on tax credits for low-income housing and historic preservation. Our Public Matters partnership has a new series called In Whose Backyard? It looks at where housing is and isn't being built. In this story, KPBS reporter Jake Gatta found San Diego isn't always building homes in areas that need them most.
I'll tell you, it sucks driving in traffic.
Ashley Harbeck is a teacher at University City High School. She commutes up and down the 805 every day.
If I am awesome and I leave at 7 a.m., it will take me 20 minutes. If I leave at 7:30 or 7:45, though, it could take up to 30 to 45 minutes.
She says the evenings are even worse, when it can take an hour to get home.
It affects everything. What events I'm going to plan to do after work, if I can have time to hang out with people or go catch a happy hour or something. I kind of miss out on some of those things because I won't get home until about 5 o'clock.
The 805 in San Diego is probably the region's worst freeway for commuters. Traffic backs up for miles on the northbound side every morning,
And in the evening, the southbound side can be a nightmare.
We have a big separation between where the job centers are and where people live.
Colin Perrin is CEO of Circulate San Diego. He says too many San Diegans can't live close to their jobs, and that means sitting in traffic.
It's really painful. You have to spend a lot of time stressed out in your car. That means you have less time at home, less time with your family, and that's just a real drain on people.
It also means lots of pollution.
You have the environmental pollution of living close to the freeway, nitric oxide and particulates. But then, of course, there's all from burning fossil fuels, all the carbon.
That's Chris Roberts from San Diego 350, a climate advocacy group. He says traffic is still one of the biggest sources of pollution in the region.
And by far, the number one source is cars and light-duty trucks.
So why are all these people driving on the 805? Well, Sereno Valley in UTC is the largest job center in San Diego County, with over 169,000 employees. But there are only about 20,000 homes in the area. So while there are some places to live, there aren't enough for all of those workers.
Historically, you weren't even allowed to build housing.
According to state housing data, only 336 new homes were permitted in this area over 6 years between 2018 and 2024. And over the past 6 years in San Diego, rents rose much slower in the places where lots of homes were permitted. The city is making an effort to address the problem with the new University Community Plan. It was approved last year. It updated the zoning to allow for 30,000 new homes in the area. But not everybody is happy with the changes.
The roadways are the main thing. We don't have the we don't have the capacity for the traffic that it's going to generate.
Bonnie Kutch lives in University City and started UC Neighbors for Responsible Growth.
We know we need housing for the city. We're merely asking for it to be done in a responsible and sensible manner.
She says the new homes won't be affordable either.
Most of it is luxury, mid-market or luxury housing, but they're adding. So that kind of goes against everything that the city says it's trying to accomplish.
So would you describe this house and these homes in this neighborhood as affordable housing?
I would say that they are mid-market, single-family homes.
Right now, the median home price in this area is nearly $1 million, and the average rent for a two-bedroom is over $3,000.
It's insanely expensive. I do have some colleagues that actually live up there, and it's always just kind of the joke that it would be impossible.
For Harbeck, more housing could mean a chance to live in the community where she teaches.
If UTC ever kind of even got like a little area that was just a little bit more like a North Park vibe or that style, I would absolutely move. It is not my first choice to drive over an hour home every day.
Jake Gata, KPBS News.
To explore a map of where housing is being built, go to kpbs.org/whose backyard. President Donald Trump has kept up pressure on Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell to lower interest rates while key data on U.S. economic growth outpaced expectations. Karen Kafa explains what it all means for your money.
The Federal Reserve not flinching amid President Donald Trump's pressure to lower interest rates and his criticism of Fed Chief Jerome Powell.
We see our current policy stance as appropriate to guard against inflation risks. We're also attentive to risks on the employment side of our mandate.
Trump has called on Powell to resign and for the Fed to lower interest rates, but Powell does not act alone. Some of the Fed's other central bankers also want to take more time to gauge the impact of Trump's tariff policies before making a move. On Wednesday, the Commerce Department said U.S. economic growth was up sharply to 3% between April and June, but observers say the driving factor was businesses dialing down their imports after a first quarter binge to stay ahead of Trump's tariff plans.
Now we have this GDP number coming in really strong just because those imports fell off a cliff. So it's not necessarily a sign that we have this amazing economic expansion going on.
Economists say they'll continue to eye consumer spending as more trade deals fall into place and tariff threats subside with key U.S. trade partners like the European Union, which agreed to a framework deal with the U.S. on Sunday.
With the EU deal, do we feel over the next few days or weeks that our consumers back on and wanting to spend because they feel like the tariffs are off? But we don't see that just yet.
And how the U.S. labor market holds up. Unemployment has remained near an historic low, but gains across sectors have been narrowing.
That's where the next shoe is waiting to drop, is how much weakness will we actually see in the labor market.
In Washington, I'm Karen Kafa.
Still some big weather headlines across the West Coast, up and down the West Coast associated with the recent tsunami threat, which really was at its peak, again, in terms of a threat last night. But there are still some areas where there may be some tsunami-related currents, especially up the coast to our north a little bit, as, again, the chaotic wave action of a series of tsunami waves, even though they weren't massive, they're still kind of sloshing around the basin, so there are still a few extra currents that could be unpredictable and not your standard California water currents. Fire danger is still a concern for the inland areas, and we have morning clouds and otherwise sunshine for the next several days. And again, the tail of the tape beyond dangerous tsunami waves on the Kamchatka Peninsula near the point of the epicenter, not too many miles from the epicenter of this 8.8 magnitude earthquake from last evening off the southeast coast of Russia. Part of Hawaii had a 5.7-foot increase in water levels. Thankfully, this was not what some had feared. Some had feared maybe a 15 or 20-foot concerns when you hear the word tsunami. And again, most forecasts began to, again, put more reasonable expectations out there. But still, people were over-prepared, which is a good thing. They took action in Hawaii, and Crescent City, California had a 3.7-foot increase in the water level with the peak of the tsunami wave. Tonight, we're getting down to 63, becoming cloudy. Near the coast, inland areas will stay clear. Very dry on Thursday. Just classic summer weather here. We're on the road to 74 into San Diego, 87 in El Cajon, 93 in Ramona, 107 in Borrego Springs. Over the next 7 days, here's the big, huge West Coast picture. Big pattern. There's a bit of an increase in moisture to our north. It will miss us to the north, so the monsoon moisture and the northwestern U.S. Will be the areas where we see the thunderstorm threat. Not here locally. Morning clouds, afternoon sunshine, pretty standard rhythm of late July, early August weather here in Southern California. Very comfortable for us here in San Diego. Inland areas here, it's going to be a little hotter. Sunday, we peak at 91 degrees with, for the most part, a bright sky. Into the mountains, here we find some relief because of extra elevation under our feet. Temperatures mid-70s to near 80 degrees. And into the deserts, this is where we have some pretty relentless heat, peaking at 113 on Sunday, so temperatures slowly escalate, and then we back off just a slight step on Monday, but it's still going to be consistently hot out there with lots of hazy sunshine. For AccuWeather, I'm Jeff Cornish for KPBS News.
President Trump is launching an effort to make it easier for Americans to access their own medical records. More than 60 companies have signed a pledge to help develop new ways to make patients' data more widely accessible across the healthcare system. Some of those companies include Amazon, Apple, and Google. Privacy advocates are concerned that making patients' data more widely accessible also means it could be less secure. Rates of colon cancer are increasing dramatically, especially among people under the age of 50. San Diego Scripps Research and a Seattle company are looking for a better way to spot it before it spreads. KPBS SciTech reporter Thomas Fudge tells us about a new and better test to detect it and how we'll know if it really works.
If you're over 50, there's a good chance you've had a colonoscopy, but you're just as likely not to have had one. It's understandable because the procedure to check inside your colon for cancer is a hassle, it's expensive and invasive.
And so what we really need is a super simple at-home sample collection test that can tell someone you're very likely to have colon polyps and you really need to go do a colonoscopy.
Polyps. They're the fleshy bumps or stalks that grow inside your colon where cancer can take hold. Mostly they're benign, but they are a threat, and if found during a colonoscopy, they're surgically removed. Now, there is a common stool sample cancer test that we can send into a medical lab, but while the current ones do detect cancer, they don't detect those polyps. Amy Leitner is a colorectal surgeon and a professor at Scripps Research. She says the current stool test is not enough to safeguard your health.
If it's negative, then typically people feel assured, well, my test was negative, so I don't really need to have a colonoscopy. But the challenge is that test is not telling you information about any polyps or kind of precancerous lesions, which are really important to remove.
Undetected polyps remain in the colon. The ones that are malignant can eventually become invasive cancers. Detection of cancer after it's begun to spread is not safe, and in some cases it could be too late. Scripps Research has formed a partnership with Viome Life Sciences based in Seattle. The company is using RNA sequencing paired with an AI computer analysis to find out if people have polyps. Momo Vujicic, the company's chief science officer, says they'll examine 1,000 people who will have colonoscopies. They want to see if their stool test and AI program is just as good as a colonoscopy at finding polyps.
Okay, here are 300 samples from people with polyps, and here is 700 samples from people without polyps. Go ahead and learn what are the molecules that are associated with each one of them, so that when we give you an unknown sample, you can actually tell us with very high accuracy, does the person have polyps or not?
Scripps Research is recruiting San Diegans to be part of the study, which will take place in the coming year. Leitner says the new test kit would be very much like the existing one people send to their healthcare providers, except this cancer screener would be able to see whether you have polyps.
Because we know the more we screen, in terms of large population level, the more we reduce the mortality from colorectal cancer.
Colorectal cancer is the third leading cause of cancer death in the U.S. among men and women. Thomas Fudge, KPBS News.
Here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS Newsroom. California Senator Alex Padilla talks to NPR's Morning Edition about how Democrats plan to stop Republicans' redistricting efforts. And Belmont Park is celebrating its 100th anniversary through Labor Day. KPBS Midday Edition is discussing the beachfront attraction's history and its future. You can find tonight's stories on our website at kpbs.org. Thank you for joining us. I'm Elizabeth Sanchez. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, air, restoration, and flood services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.